You know, when you sit down on a dark theater and the screen lights up and the music
Oh,
swells,
yeah, the anticipation.
right, there is this immediate, almost biological expectation that you're watching real life unfold.
You're watching reality,
Yeah,
movement.
exactly.
Yeah.
But the wild thing is, it's a total physiological trick.
Mm.
You aren't watching moving pictures at all. You are just sitting in the dark, watching a series of completely still photographs being flashed in front of your face at 24 frames per second.
Because your brain simply cannot process the gaps of blackness between the photos fast enough.
Right.
So it just stitches them together. It forces you to perceive continuous motion where there literally is none.
Which is crazy to think about.
It really is. I mean, it is the absolute definition of a grand illusion.
Yeah.
One that just completely bypasses the logical part of our brain.
And that illusion, you know, how it's built, how it's basically weaponized to make us feel things, is exactly what we're exploring today on this deep dive.
Yeah, it's a fascinating topic.
We are unpacking the hidden visual language of movies and the really rigorous craft of directing. And we're drawing heavily from Paul de Bastolari's film production handbook, along with his extensive notes on screenwriting.
Right, which are incredibly detailed.
So detailed.
Oh.
And whether you are aiming to be a filmmaker yourself, or you're just someone listening who wants to understand how the media you consume is quietly manipulating your psychology, the mission here is to crack that code.
Yeah, and if we connect this to the bigger picture, filmmaking really boils down to the deliberate, precise manipulation of light, sound, and, like you said, human psychology.
Right.
You're making an audience feel something profoundly real, using something entirely fabricated.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand how a director actually does that, we have to look at the historical roots.
Absolutely. Because cinema operates pre-verbally. Long before a character speaks a single line, the visual has to tell the story.
Right.
And the ultimate proof of this is the silent film era. I mean, those films lacked a single spoken word.
Yeah, obviously.
But they successfully conveyed these deep, complex human emotions. Tragedy, massive narrative arcs, all of it.
That actually makes me think of that famous historical anecdote about the Lumiere brothers.
Oh, back in the 1890s.
Yeah, the 1890s. They screened this short film called The Arrival of a Train. And it was literally just a continuous shot of a steam engine pulling into a station moving directly toward the camera.
And the audience completely lost their minds.
Totally lost it. They were genuinely terrified. People thought a real train was about to burst through the physical screen and crush them in their seats.
But the interesting part is who was sitting in that same panicked audience.
Right, George Méliès.
Exactly, a stage magician. And he didn't run. Because of his background in stage illusions, he recognized exactly what was happening.
He saw the trick.
He saw that the medium wasn't a window into reality, it was trick photography, a constructed illusion that you could manipulate to control an audience's emotions.
Because our brains are hardwired for that.
Yes. We process visual threats and social dynamics fractions of a second faster than we process language. Méliès realized you could hijack that biological hardwiring.
I always think of it like watching an in-flight movie on a plane when, you know, your headphone jack is broken.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Like,
yeah.
if the director did their job right, you shouldn't need the audio to understand exactly what the characters are feeling.
Yeah, what the stakes are.
Exactly. The visual cues alone should carry all the narrative weight.
Think about your own favorite movie moments, you know, the scenes that stick in your memory for years. Rarely are they long, wordy monologues.
Yeah, that's true.
They're usually a character's silent, devastating emotional reaction to a piece of news, or a high-speed action sequence, or just the visual revelation of a tragedy. Bastolari's emphasizes in the text that dialogue doesn't actually forward a scene.
It's the action.
Right. The physical actions and visual reactions of the characters do the work.
So if the visuals are everything, and if framing dictates power, then the director's camera placement is essentially like a psychological weapon.
100%.
So how exactly are they aiming it? Because the psychology of camera framing in these notes is incredibly specific.
Well, the overarching mantra in the text is eyes before face.
Eyes before face.
Meaning the audience's eyes need to be directed to the emotional truth of the image immediately. So let's look at the actual mechanics of a camera angle.
Okay.
If a director places the camera below a subject, looking up a low angle, that character instantly appears larger. They dominate the frame.
Because it mimics our physical perspective,
Yeah.
right? Like a child looking up at an adult.
Exactly. It triggers a subconscious evolutionary feeling of submission and awe in the viewer. Without a single word being spoken, you just feel that this character holds all the power.
And the inverse triggers the opposite biological response.
Right.
Like if you put the camera high up, looking down what they call a God's eye view, the subject looks small, swallowed by their environment.
Which mimics us looking down at an insect or a child.
Yeah, and it triggers a feeling of dominance in the viewer, so the character appears totally vulnerable and weak.
Beyond just angles, directors also use what the notes call compositional influencers.
What are those?
They're visual guidelines that subconsciously tell our eyes where to look and how to interpret power dynamics based on how our brains map physical space.
Okay, give me an example.
Take triangular composition. The source details a shot where one character's leg is prominent in the extreme foreground, right? Taking up a massive portion of the screen,
Yeah.
while the other character is placed small, deep in the background.
And our eyes naturally connect those points of interest in a triangle.
Yes. And because of our primal threat assessment, we instantly locate the biggest object in our field of vision as the dominant force.
Oh, wow.
So pre-verbally, you understand this is a scene about seduction, and you know exactly who holds the power. The frame essentially said, I am seducing you, and I am in charge, completely bypassing the need for dialogue.
The setting itself is often directed to act as a character, too, to achieve a similar effect.
Oh, absolutely.
Like Bestolarides references director George Miller. He uses framing in desolate landscapes. So he'll frame a character in a wide shot, leaving massive amounts of empty sky above them.
What filmmakers call headroom.
Right, headroom. And that negative space literally feels heavy. It physically weighs down on the character in the frame, communicating its immense isolation and loneliness without a single line of sad dialogue.
It's pure visual storytelling.
But wait, I have to push back on this a little.
Sure.
If the visuals are doing literally all the emotional and narrative heavy lifting, I mean, if an angle can tell us who's in charge and negative space can tell us who's sad, why am I bothering to write a script?
That's a fair question.
Isn't screenwriting just a waste of time then?
Not all. The visual is the foundation, right? But dialogue does something different. It elevates the visual, especially when you're dealing with complex information.
Like exposition.
Exactly. The hardest thing to write in any script is exposition. That dreaded moment where a character just has to explain the historical backstory or the rules of the world to the audience.
Because usually, bad exposition is just two talking heads stating facts at each other.
Which is boring.
It's so boring. It breaks the cinematic illusion and it just ignores the intelligence of the viewer. You feel like you're suddenly watching a Wikipedia article being read aloud.
But good exposition marries that necessary dialogue with visual storytelling to basically trick the brain. Bestolarides cites a phenomenal example from Steven Spielberg's Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Oh, I love that movie.
There's a scene where a wealthy patron has to explain the entire historical backstory of the Holy Grail to Indy. It is a heavy, dense lore dump. It could easily put an audience to sleep.
But Spielberg doesn't just let them sit in chairs and talk. He occupies the audience's brain with a physical task.
Right. He blocks the scene using 3 distinct visual props. There's a sacred stone tablet, a crystal wine glass, and an ancient manuscript.
And blocking, just for context, meaning the literal physical choreography of the actors and the camera moving through space.
Exactly. So the dialogue is delivered while these props are being actively handled, passed back and forth across the room. The patron passes Indy the wine glass right as he drops the crucial piece of lore about the Grail.
So giving the audience's eyes a dynamic, physical, task-like tracking moving objects occupies the brain's boredom filter.
Exactly. It keeps the visual cortex engaged, so the dense, potentially boring audio lore slips right past our defenses and into our understanding.
That's brilliant. The heavy exposition just becomes this dynamic visual dance.
But here's the catch.
What's that?
So you've written this brilliant visual dance with props and angles. You have your low-angle power shots and your triangular composition sketched out in a notebook.
Yeah.
But how do you actually make 100 tired crew members execute it before the sun goes down?
Right, because translating the script to the screen isn't just an artistic endeavor. It is an exercise in extreme high-pressure leadership.
The reality of a film set is governed by 2 brutal constraints. There's never enough time, and there's never enough money.
And the behavior of the entire cast and crew is a direct reflection of the director's attitude.
Yes. Bestolarides establishes a core rule for directors in the text. Be proactive, not reactive. If a director is panicked about losing sunlight, the crew becomes panicked. They get careless.
Yeah.
If a director is exhausted and physically shows it, the crew loses morale immediately. A director can never let the crew see them tired.
It's such an intense environment because after every single take, the instant the director yells, "Cut!" the entire crew turns and looks at them for the next instruction.
All eyes on you.
There is zero time for, I don't know, you either have a vision or you fail.
You're the emotional and organizational anchor of the set. But having a vision doesn't mean being a dictator.
Right.
You're only one creative on set. You have to listen to your experts, but you have to use deductive reasoning to streamline their ideas into the day's reality.
How so?
Well, for instance, say a cinematographer wants to bring in a massive truck of specialized lighting gear to illuminate a room perfectly. A proactive director has to look at the ticking clock. They might look at a practical desk lamp in the room, a prop lamp that actually emits light, and figure out how to shape that existing natural light to get an emotionally resonant shot in half the time.
Saving hours of rigging massive movie lights.
Exactly.
The director is essentially the conductor of a symphony. You know, like a conductor doesn't tell a master cellist exactly where to place their fingers on the frets because the cellist knows the instrument way better.
Right.
The conductor just tells them to play the piece more mournfully. So a director doesn't need to tell a veteran cinematographer to screw a 50mm lens onto the camera. They tell them they want the scene to feel claustrophobic.
And you let the expert choose the tool to achieve that singular emotional sound.
Right?
You just have to know how to guide those experts. And honestly, whether you're making a feature film, leading a corporate project, or managing a chaotic restaurant kitchen, your team absorbs your emotional state.
They absorb your anxiety and they absorb your confidence.
Yes. If you project calm, proactive problem solving, and if you listen to your experts but maintain the emotional goal of the project, your team will mirror that resilience right back to you.
That raises the ultimate question, though, for anyone trying to learn this craft.
Which is,
How does someone actually develop that kind of resilience? I mean, how do you become the kind of proactive, visionary leader who doesn't crack when 100 people are staring at you waiting for an answer, especially when you're just starting out?
it comes down to the mindset and the rigorous discipline of the student long before they ever step onto a set.
Okay.
Bastolarides draws this really sharp psychological line between the poor mindset and the wealthy mindset for creatives.
I found this part of the notes fascinating.
It really is. The poor mindset is basically a coping mechanism. It's the habit of complaining about what you lack. Aspiring filmmakers often say, I don't have enough money for a budget. I don't have the right industry connections. I don't own the best camera.
It's a convenient way of absolving yourself of the responsibility to even try.
Exactly. Because if the world is fundamentally stacked against you, why bother doing the hard work?
But the wealthy mindset flips that entirely. It's all about investing in the self, valuing long-term relationships over short-term transactions, and just embracing the necessity of risk.
There's an incredible anecdote in the source notes about a film student that perfectly grounds this in reality.
Oh, the girl at the Amazon warehouse.
Yes. She was working full-time stacking boxes at an Amazon warehouse just to make ends meet, but desperately wanted to get into the film industry.
Right.
So the author offered her a job as a production assistant, a PA on a short film, but the catch was that it was completely unpaid. She had to volunteer her time and labor for 3 exhausting days.
And someone operating with a poor mindset would immediately reject that.
Totally. They'd claim they know their worth, refuse to work for free, and choose to stay at the warehouse where the immediate hourly wage is guaranteed.
But she took the unpaid opportunity.
Yeah.
She showed up, worked incredibly hard, and built genuine relationships with the professional crew.
And it paid off. One of the assistant directors saw her work ethic and immediately started hiring her for paid professional gigs. She traded short-term free physical labor for immense long-term career value.
Yeah, when the author asked her later which she preferred, getting paid to stack boxes or working for free on a stressful film set, she chose the set.
Because she invested her time in an environment that paid dividends in practical knowledge and industry connections.
Which she eventually parlayed into working on major studio sets for Disney.
Understanding that your mind and your network are your greatest assets directly challenges the rampant obsession with gear that plagues aspiring creators.
Oh, the gear obsession is so real.
Students always fall into the trap of believing that buying a $10,000 cinema camera makes them a director.
It definitely doesn't.
You're just buying a lifestyle you can't afford to impress people you don't know. The Stolarides notes that he shot 3 globally distributed films on a 4-year-old 1080p camera.
Which in the fast-moving tech world is basically ancient history. I mean, a modern smartphone shoots at a higher resolution than that.
Right. The camera doesn't tell the story. The operator does. Filmmaking is 1% imagination and 99% perspiration. You have to write honestly, which is difficult. You have to revise relentlessly, which is tedious.
And you have to endure the unglamorous work of preparation. Like the notes state, the pain of discipline is much less than the pain of regret. I keep
Yes,
thinking about that quote from the text. A short pencil is usually better than a long memory.
that's a great one.
It's such a simple truth for anyone trying to learn a complex new skill.
Right.
You can't just hold the movie in your head. You have to do the physical, unsexy work of preparation. You have to take the notes, draw the terrible stick figure storyboards, and write down the exhaustive shot lists.
But we live in an era where it is incredibly easy to look like you're doing that work without actually doing it.
Oh, absolutely.
The industry rule is show, don't tell. Yet, social media is flooded with content creators talking endlessly about their plans, selling courses on their supposed expertise, and posting behind-the-scenes photos of a project that never actually gets finished.
They're stunting their own growth by prematurely giving away the energy of their goals.
They're too busy making videos for YouTube about being a filmmaker to actually endure the silent, frustrating process of making a film.
Yeah.
You have to treat your ambitions like a delicate sapling. If you expose it to the harsh winds of public opinion and the desperate need for external validation too early, it will get uprooted.
You have to nurture your dreams in private.
You have to do the actual work in the dark before you bring it into the light. The author mentions a friend who waited tables for years, bought all the expensive gear, and called himself a director.
But did he ever direct anything?
Well, he spent all his time trying to hustle investors for $15,000 to make a single short film. He was paralyzed by the idea that he needed money to start.
Meanwhile, the author just kept making films on cheap cameras and actually built a career.
Right. That friend was trapped by an illusion. He believed the barrier to entry was financial, when really, the barrier was his own unwillingness to just start with what he had in his pocket.
Man. So we started today by peeling back the illusion of 24 frames per second to realize that visual literacy is our universal pre-verbal language. Movies speak directly to our evolutionary psychology through camera angles and negative space before a single word is spoken.
Mm-hmm.
And we explored how directing is the art of mastering that visual language while simultaneously executing the grueling leadership required to guide a massive team under the pressure of a ticking clock.
The pressure's real.
And we saw that mastering any craft requires shedding the excuses of the poor mindset, ignoring the noise of social media, and embracing rigorous, quiet discipline. So whether you're listening and aiming for the film industry, or you're just someone trying to communicate better, lead a team more effectively, or finally start that project you've been putting off, the principles of showing, not telling, and proactive leadership apply everywhere. Your mindset dictates your reality.
And to that point of mindset dictating reality, I want to leave you with one final thought drawn from the source material.
Okay, lay it on us.
It's a story about the famous escape artist, Harry Houdini. Houdini once made a public bet that he could escape from any jail cell in the country. So he was placed in a newly constructed cell, and the heavy iron door was slammed shut.
Right.
He took out a 10-inch metal wire he had hidden in his belt, and he began working the complex lock. And he worked for hours. He sweat, he struggled, his fingers bled, and he exhausted every single technique he had ever learned.
Oh, wow.
Finally, completely defeated, physically drained, and drenched in sweat, he collapsed against the heavy iron door, and the door swung open.
Wait, really?
It was never locked. Houdini was trapped for hours entirely by the belief that he was locked in. His own assumptions, his own mind built the prison. So how many incredible stories, brilliant films, or life-changing ideas are sitting unmade right now simply because the creator is locked in a prison of their own imagination, waiting for the right gear, the perfect budget, or someone else's permission to begin? The door is open. What's stopping you from walking through it?